On the debate tonight, Congress's manifesto for the Lok Sabha elections is out with 22 massive pro-farmer promises. Congress party makes the farmer crisis one of their main agendas for this election.
एक सेपरेट किसान बजट होना चाहिए, जैसे रेलवे बजट होता था। किसानों का एक सेपरेट बजट होना चाहिए। हिंदुस्तान के किसान को मालूम होना चाहिए, जो हमारे किसान हैं, ईमानदार लोग, वो जब बैंक लोन लेते हैं, अगर वो पैसा वापस नहीं दे पाते हैं तो उनको जेल में डाल दिया जाता है, क्रिमिनल ऑफेंस माना जाता है। हमने निर्णय लिया है कि उसको अब हम क्रिमिनल ऑफेंस ना माने। अगर किसान कर्जा ना दे पाए तो वो क्रिमिनल ऑफेंस ना हो, वो सिविल ऑफेंस हो।
The BJP was quick with their point-to-point rebuttal for the Congress's Sankalp Patra for the Lok Sabha elections.
Out of ignorance, he makes unimplementable and dangerous promises. I am sure the country will not be in a mood to oblige him.
Mirror now asks, can Congress woo rural voters with their poll promises? Is the Congress manifesto a pre-poll carrot, or can it really end the farmer distress in India? Let's debate.
Well, there's no doubt about the fact that the farmers of India are in acute distress right now. The Congress has released its manifesto, which is very specific and very detailed, as specifically as it's going to target and solve, or plans to target and solve these problems. The questions to ask are these. As Mr. Jaitley, the finance minister, had said earlier today, he said these promises are not implementable, they're not practical. So we've got together a panel of experts to tell us whether they believe that these promises are practical and implementable, and if they are promises that will relieve some of the stress right now in the farm sector. Also, more importantly, the first point of the manifesto says that farm loans will be waived in all states. Is this a total farm loan waiver? In that case, where will the 10 lakh crore rupees come from? And can we afford it? On the show with me, Siraj Hussain, former Agriculture Secretary, Shiv Kumar Sharma, President of the Rashtriya Kisan Mazdoor Mahasangh, Harish Damodaran, Rural Affairs and Agriculture Editor of the Indian Express, Urmilesh is a senior journalist, Anupam, spokesperson for Swaraj India, and Mr. Salman Soos, spokesperson for the Congress Party. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time. Mr. Soos, good evening. My first question to you. When the Congress Party says you will waive loans in all states, is this a complete loan waiver? And if so, where will the money come from?
Well, it is, the promise is about a loan waiver in the remaining states where we have not yet had a loan waiver. We just had a loan waiver in 3 states, and and some other states have also had a loan waiver. So it will likely be in the remaining states. In terms of money, I think when we look at a particular sector, we tend to look at the cost of a particular sector, but we don't look at the economy as a whole. You have to look at the entire spectrum of the economy and then say, what is it going to add to the cost of our kind of budget? And as far as I can tell, there are so many things in this manifesto, which is, in my view, a wonderful manifesto. It has a lot of potential to expand economic activity in this country. If that happens, the people who say, like Mr. Jaitley says, that this is a manifesto that is unimplementable, it may be for the BJP because they are unable to implement good things. And it is dangerous, he says. Yes, it is going to be dangerous. It is dangerous to the BJP's electoral prospects. But to the naysayers, I say, you have the example of Narega from 2004, and look where it is now. I think there's a lot of economic activity that's coming up. If we implement that well, fiscal concerns are not, in my view, are not, unsurmountable.
Mr. Soos, to come back to specifics, Congress promises to waive the outstanding farm loans from other states as well. Now, on last count, this is October 2018, the outstanding farm loans in India amounted to 10.6 lakh crore rupees. Is there an understanding of where this money will come from?
Well, first of all, when you look at farmers as a community and their debt overhang, The problem is, just as we see in the banking sector, if you have NPAs and there's a debt overhang, if you don't do something about that, you know, the whole thing chokes up, the whole system chokes up. So our banking sector was choked up. The government took a long time to come to grips with it. Then in the 4th year, they started doing something about it, and we're still not out of it. If we let the farmers and this whole, like you said, 10 lakh crores or whatever it is, I don't know the exact amounts that will have to be waived off. If we don't actually address it right, you know, up front, what it will do is it'll choke up our agricultural sector. It'll choke up our rural economy, and that'll have far broader impacts because the rural economy is not sitting somewhere in the corner.
No,
it's
Mr.
going to have
Mr.
its impacts on the formal
you're talking
sector.
about the intent. I asked about the money. So, is there an understanding of where the money will come from?
Well, that's what I'm. Well, you know, there's okay. So there's plenty of opportunity to get money. I mean, but it doesn't have to be exactly, okay, you're giving it to agriculture, are you getting it from agriculture? For example, I'll give you just one example. Take Nyai, which is going to have a disproportionate impact in the rural economy. What will 5 crore families, which get 6,000 rupees a month, what will they do with that money? You know, Faye, people like you and I, if we have disposable income, we tend to save money also. These people don't even get their basic needs met. They will consume that money. That money is going to circulate in the economy, in the broader economy. That is going to lead to economic activity. That is going to create sources of tax revenue. That's how you focus on creating new opportunities. The other thing is, in terms of just from the budgetary perspective, in the Congress manifesto, we have been very clear that we will protect core subsidies.
Okay,
but
so
there are many things on the table.
Will you increase taxes, Mr. Sos?
Are on the table. Also, by the way, the Congress Party. I'm coming to that. In terms of revenue generation, the Congress Party has a very specific proposal on disinvestment of public sector undertakings that are not central public sector undertakings that are not core or strategic to this nation. The Congress Party is actually saying very specifically that is a clear revenue generation opportunity.
Okay.
So we are being specific. I'm glad you're asking us questions, but there are things in this manifesto that are going to transform our economy, something Mr. Modi had a great opportunity to do, but he squandered it.
All right, let me bring in the rest of the panel. Harish Damodaran, Rural Affairs and Agriculture Editor of the Indian Express. Mr. Damodaran, back of the envelope calculation, please tell me if we're right here. 10 lakh crore rupees for a farm loan waiver, 3.6 lakh crore rupees for the Nyai scheme. We're talking about 13.6 lakh crore or 14 lakh crore rupees right now. The government in its last union budget had about 27 lakh or 30 lakh crore rupees to spend altogether. GDP is 200 lakh crore. Does it seem like we'd be able to afford this now?
I don't think they're going to waive the entire 10 lakh crore amount. You know, I mean, I certainly believe that that a debt waiver can only be implemented at the central level. You know, that kind of resources only the center will be able to bring in. And you don't need to waive the entire 10 lakh crore. You know, it can. I mean, you can waive maybe up to 2 lakh rupees per farmer, whatever. You know, that kind of some kind of that kind of a system. So it doesn't mean that you spend the entire 10 lakh crore. You can the entire bill may be half that, maybe even a quarter of that. It doesn't mean a blanket debt waiver. I mean, as far as I can. See, these anyway are to be you know, discussed further. I think it'll unfold. We really don't know how it's going to unfold. But what I'm impressed with is two particular promises. You know, one is they have committed to repeal the APMC Act, you know, that is the Agriculture Produce Market Committee Acts, you know, and free up all trade in agriculture produce, both exports and domestic movement, you know, remove all restrictions. And the second thing which they have said is that they will repeal the Essential Commodities Act, you know. In fact, they have said that, you know, that it belongs to the age of controls, you know, and that they will bring in a sort of a law where you can have any any such restrictions only in the case of national emergencies, you know. So according to me, it is these two acts which I mean, these two promises which are very specific and according to me very forward looking, you know, if you ask me. And these can actually see, because you really never had the benefits of liberalization percolating to the farm sector. You only had it in the case of for industry and for services, you know. So when you're giving this freedom to the farmer to sell anytime, anywhere, you know, and to anyone, I think that is going to be a very big step if it is really going to be taken. And if you're going to remove all restrictions on stock holding and, you know, and these kind of thing, then you have the chance to really attract large investments, you know, in whether it is in warehousing, whether it is in refrigeration, you know, these kind of things. See, if I'm a big guy, you know, if I want to buy, I'm not going to invest if suddenly tomorrow the government were to say that I cannot hold more than 1,500 tons of urad or moong dal or something, you know. I think this is something which will be which according to me is really reformist and very forward looking, and also in tune with the new realities in India, which is where which is one of, you know, surplus production. You know, we have moved from an era of deficit. So I think that is something which is really worth you know, this thing. The others, you know, whatever loan.
I'll come back to the others. I just want to get opening statements from all the panelists, if I may. Siraj Hussain, former Agriculture Secretary. Mr. Hussain, what is your appraisal right now of the Congress promises? Do you believe that these are the solutions to our farm sector?
I think it is a good effort which the Congress party has done to bring and to highlight many of the problems which are facing the Indian agriculture sector. I would have liked to see somewhat more emphasis on water. Because I feel that many states of India, especially the Green Revolution states, are in need of some very specific, long-term and perhaps expensive solutions which require central government to come forward and share the burden of alternate crops or subsidizing the farmers for loss of income from paddy, etc. That is one. And secondly, there is a very good promise to substantially increase the expenditure on research and development. We really need to do something very serious about the ICAR institutions so that they can focus on research and bring new technologies. Our farmers have shown that they are very highly recipient and attentive to the technological developments. So having said this, I do not think the expenditure on farm loan waivers is going to be 10 lakh crores. My own assessment is that it will be in the range of 2.5 to 3 lakh crores. In any case, in the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen large states like Maharashtra, UP, Rajasthan, Karnataka waiving their loans. So perhaps it may not be needed there immediately.
Well, Shiv Kumar Sharma joins us right now. He's the president of the Rashtriya Kisan Mazdoor Mahasangh. शर्मा जी, हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए बहुत धन्यवाद। क्या आपने कांग्रेस पार्टी की मैनिफेस्टो की डिटेल्स पढ़े हैं? क्या आपको लगता है कि ऐसे इसकी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन से जो किसानों की समस्या है अभी, वो हल हो जाएंगे?
देखिए, जो भी घोषणा पत्र होता है, अभी 4 दिन पहले हमने आयोग को एक ज्ञापन दिया है कि जितनी भी पार्टियां अपना मैनिफेस्टो जारी कर रही हैं, इसको कानूनी दायरे में लाया जाए, क्योंकि पार्टियां अपनी घोषणाएं तो करती हैं परंतु वो पूरा नहीं कभी करती हैं। पिछली सरकार में भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने अपने मैनिफेस्टो में कहा था 5 नंबर कॉलम में, वादा नंबर 5, कि हम किसानों को उसकी फसल की लागत का 1.5 गुना लाभकारी मूल्य देंगे, C2+50 स्वामीनाथन आयोग की रिपोर्ट को लागू करेंगे। 2015 23 जनवरी को शपथ पत्र देती है मोदी सरकार कि हम ये नहीं कर सकते, तो फिर इस घोषणा पत्र में वादों का क्या अर्थ है इस देश में? आजादी के बाद इस प्रकार के चुनाव के समय पर लोग लुभावने और मतदाताओं को रिझाने के लिए ये घोषणा पत्र हुआ करता है। जो कांग्रेस पार्टी ने घोषणा पत्र जारी किया है उसका हम स्वागत करते हैं, परंतु ये पूरा कैसे होगा? एक रिट और लगाई गई थी, उस रिट में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने गाइडलाइन दी थी कि जो भी पार्टियां अपने घोषणा पत्र में जो प्रावधान कर रही हैं उसका पैसा कहां से आएगा ये पार्टियों को बताना होगा। यह भी है, हम ये भी कह रहे हैं कि अगर ये पार्टियां घोषणा पत्र में दिए गए वादों को पूरा नहीं करती हैं तो इन पार्टियों पर प्रतिबंध लगाया जाए, इनको पार्टियों पर दंडित किया जाए इनको, क्योंकि अभी तक आजादी के बाद में घोषणा पत्रों के द्वारा इस गरीब जनता के साथ, भोली भाली जनता के साथ, किसानों के साथ सभी पार्टियों ने बारी बारी से ठगी की है। हम आशान्वित हैं कि ये जो कांग्रेस पार्टी ने घोषणा पत्र जारी किया है, परंतु अगर ये कांग्रेस पार्टियां, सभी पार्टियां मिलके किसानों से ये पूछती कि उनकी बेसिक नीड क्या है, उनकी बेसिक नीड पर कोई पार्टी जाने को तैयार नहीं है। 72 साल देश की आजादी के हो गए, 4 मांगों को लेकर देश के 182 गैर राजनीतिक किसान संगठन पूरे देश में आंदोलन चला रहे हैं और उन्होंने केवल 4 मांगे रखी हैं। 4 मांगों से हमको 5वीं मांग नहीं चाहिए। जब तक किसान को उसकी फसल की लागत का लाभकारी मूल्य नहीं मिलेगा तब तक ये सारी घोषणाएं बेईमानी हैं। इससे किसान का भला नहीं होने वाला है और इनके निकम्मेपन के कारण देश का अन्नदाता कर्जदार हुआ है। जब तक उसको एक बार पूरी तरह ऋण मुक्त नहीं किया जाता तब तक किसान आत्महत्या करता रहेगा। 43% आत्महत्याओं में वृद्धि हुई है। ये देश के माथे पर बदनुमा दाग है। जो छोटा किसान है, जो मंडी तक नहीं पहुंच पाता है, उस किसान की आय को सुनिश्चित करने की दिशा में कांग्रेस पार्टी ने कुछ प्रयास किया है, परंतु आगे क्या करेंगे ये मुझे पता नहीं है। अभी तक तो घोषणाओं में कुछ हुआ नहीं है।
उनको जवाब देने दीजिए।
चौथी मांग हमारी थी कि फल, दूध और सब्जी को भी समर्थन मूल्य के दायरे में लाया जाए। ये हमारी 4 मांगों को लेकर राष्ट्रव्यापी मूवमेंट हमने खड़े किए हैं। तो ये 4 मांगें किसानों की बेसिक नीड है, बेसिक बुनियादी मांगे हैं। इस पर कोई गंभीरता से पार्टियों को विचार करना चाहिए, हमारा ये निवेदन है।
जी, Salman Soos, do you want to respond to Shiv Kumar Sharma directly, because he does believe that these promises are worthless because parties have been making these promises term after term and nobody has fulfilled these promises, including the two UPA 1 and UPA 2 that didn't do enough for farmers. Why should the farmers believe you now?
देखिए शर्मा जी, जैसे आपने कहा कि किसानों से भी पूछना चाहिए कि उनकी क्या ज़रूरतें हैं। जो जिस तरह से हमने ये घोषणा पत्र बनाया, ये तो एक हिसाब से कंसल्टेशन हुई। हिंदुस्तान भर में बहुत जगह गए और किसानों से भी पूछा क्या चीज़ें हैं जिससे आपके लिए आपकी ज़िंदगी संवर जाए, क्योंकि हमें पता है कि किसान भाई बहनों की हालत तो बहुत मुश्किल में है। इसीलिए जो आपने जैसे वो लोन की बात की, उसका हमारा पहला पॉइंट जो है वो लोन पे ही है कि भाई हमने मध्य प्रदेश, छत्तीसगढ़ और राजस्थान में जो वादा किया था लोन वेवर का वो किया, लेकिन अभी मुल्क भर में किसान लोन के नीचे दबा हुआ है, उसको वहां से बचाना है और उसका हमने वादा, वो पहला पॉइंट हमारा वही है। दूसरा जो ये है, इसमें बहुत सारे ऐसे पॉइंट्स हैं जिनसे किसान एक हिसाब से जो इस सिस्टम में दबा था, एपीएमसी है, बाकी रिस्ट्रिक्शंस है, एसेंशियल कमोडिटीज एक्ट है, उन सब को जब हटाया जाएगा तभी कुछ इंप्रूवमेंट आ सकती है, क्योंकि सिस्टम को इंप्रूव करने की जरूरत है। आप कहते हैं कि भाई आप इसको कानूनी दायरे में लाइए मैनिफेस्टो को, ये तो खैर अब सुप्रीम कोर्ट देख सकता है, इलेक्शन कमीशन देख सकता है, लेकिन मैं आपको एक बात बताऊं ईमानदारी की, इंसान नियत करता है और फिर कभी खुदा न खास्ता कभी कोई इमरजेंसी आ जाती है, कोई काम नहीं हो पाता, तो उस पर हर कोई नेता खराब नहीं होता। ये कहना कि हर कोई नेता खराब है, हर कोई पार्टी खराब है, ये ठीक बात नहीं है। बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो पब्लिक सर्विस में आते हैं, बहुत लोगों के लिए कुछ काम करना चाहते हैं। हमारी पार्टी गरीब लोगों के लिए कुछ काम करना चाहती है, क्योंकि उनकी आवाज ऊपर तक नहीं पहुंचती। हम उनको आवाज दिलवाना चाहते हैं, उनके लिए काम करते हैं। इसीलिए हमने, राहुल जी ने किसानों की बात हर जगह की है, और इसीलिए हम कहते हैं कि आपने मोदी जी की बातें सुन ली, आपने उनकी जुमलेबाजी भी सुन ली। उन्होंने कहा, वो तो कहते हैं बीजेपी वाले कि हमने स्वामीनाथन कमीशन को इंप्लीमेंट कर दिया, हालांकि नहीं किया, लेकिन कहते हैं। लोगों को गुमराह करते हैं। हमारा काम झूठ बोलना नहीं है, हमारा काम यह है कि हमने जो कहा है हम वो करके दिखाएंगे, और हमने जो मध्य प्रदेश, छत्तीसगढ़ और राजस्थान के लोगों के साथ वादे किए वो निभाएंगे। देखिए, डेमोक्रेसी में यही है कि अगर कोई नहीं निभाता है वादे, उनको निकाला जाता है। जिस तरह से मुझे पूरा यकीन है इस बार मोदी जी को लोग निकाल देंगे।
शर्मा जी, आपको जवाब देनी है?
देखिए, मैं आदरणीय से एक बात पूछना चाहता हूं। जिस बात को मैं नहीं पूछना चाह रहा था वो मजबूर कर रहे हैं मुझे पूछने के लिए कि स्वामीनाथन आयोग की रिपोर्ट को 2007 में लागू होना था। स्वामीनाथन रिपोर्ट की 10 मुख्यमंत्रियों की कमेटी बनी थी, उन्होंने कहा था कि जनवरी 2007 में लागू होगी। तो उस समय उनकी सरकार थी, उन्होंने लागू क्यों नहीं की? बीजेपी ने अपने घोषणा पत्र में रखा कि हम लागू करेंगे, उन्होंने भी लागू नहीं की। और हमको लागत के आधार पर लाभकारी मूल्य जो मिलना चाहिए था, उस दिशा में C2+50 मिलना चाहिए था, वो आज तक नहीं मिला। तो जब तक मैं बार बार निवेदन कर रहा हूं कि निश्चित तौर से राहुल गांधी जी किसानों के लिए काफी चिंता कर रहे हैं, हम उनको साधुवाद भी देते हैं, धन्यवाद भी देते हैं, मगर जब तक आप हमको C2+50 पर गंभीरता से किसानों को नहीं देंगे, किसानों को लागत के आधार पर लाभकारी मूल्य नहीं देंगे, तब तक ये जितनी भी आप घोषणाएं कर रहे हैं इसका हमारे लिए कोई फायदा नहीं होगा। किसान कर्जदार होता जाएगा। और अभी तो किसान पर 10 से 15 लाख का कर्जा बकाया है। अभी आपने 2 लाख कर्जा की माफी की बात कही है, शुरुआत भी कुछ मध्य प्रदेश में हुई है, कई जगह हुई है, कई जगह अभी होना शेष है। उसके लिए आपका हम धन्यवाद देते हैं, पर किसान कर्जदार है और वो कर्जे से बाहर ऐसे नहीं निकलेगा जब तक उसको आप लागत के आधार पर लाभकारी मूल्य नहीं देंगे
जी।
तब तक सारी योजनाएं, सारी घोषणाएं सबकी सब बेईमानी है। मेरी प्रार्थना है कि किसान को उसकी फसल की लागत का लाभकारी मूल्य दिए जाने की दिशा में ठोस कदम उठाने की आवश्यकता है। जी,
let me once again open this up to the rest of the panel. Urmilesh is a senior journalist. Urmilesh जी, आप सुन रहे थे अभी कि शर्मा जी ने क्या कहा, आपका रिएक्शन क्या है? Why do you believe that the farmers should believe what is being promised now? Is there a reason for them to believe this will be implemented?
नहीं, शर्मा जी जो कह रहे हैं वो सही है कि इसके पहले भी जितने वायदे किए गए किसानों को लेकर वो आमतौर पे लागू पूरी तरह नहीं किए गए। लेकिन अब हमने देखा अभी हाल में जब छत्तीसगढ़ में, मध्य प्रदेश में, राजस्थान में कांग्रेस पार्टी ने कुछ वायदे किए थे, उनमें कुछ एक राज्यों में तत्काल कुछ लागू हुआ, आधा अधूरा ही हुआ। लेकिन छत्तीसगढ़ सरकार ने, मैंने अभी पता भी किया, मैं बीच में गया था 2 स्टेट्स घूमने, तो छत्तीसगढ़ में मैंने किसानों से भी पूछा, उन्होंने न केवल अपना वायदा पूरा किया बल्कि बोनस भी उन्होंने किसानों के यहाँ ट्रांसफ़र किया है। तो एक मॉडल छत्तीसगढ़ का भी है जिन्होंने बहुत तेज़ी से, बहुत कम समय में उसको लागू किया है। लेकिन इससे ये बात सही उनकी है कि इसे स्वामीनाथन आयोग की जो पूरी रिपोर्ट का रिकमेंडेशन है और जिस पर वायदा दोनों पार्टियां करती रही हैं कि वो लागू करेंगी, वो पूरी तरह मुकम्मल लागू नहीं हुआ। लेकिन हम लोन के बारे में केवल कह रहे थे और बोनस का भी भुगतान उन्होंने किया है कुछ एक राज्यों में। मैं एक दूसरी बात कह रहा था जो शर्मा जी की बात को एक तरह से पुख्ता करती है कि ये वायदे इसलिए नहीं किए जाते, वायदे किए जाते हैं चुनाव जीतने के लिए और लागू नहीं किए जाते क्योंकि वो दूसरी प्रायोरिटीज़ चली आती हैं। जब वो रूलिंग पार्टी बन जाती हैं ये पार्टियां, तो उनकी जो प्रायोरिटीज़ हैं वो भटक जाती हैं। अब सवाल इस बात का है कि आज ही मीडिया से लेकर के विपक्ष के लोग, पक्ष के लोग तमाम सवाल उठा रहे हैं कि साहब न्याय योजना पर 3.6 लाख करोड़ का खर्च आएगा। ये कहाँ से आएगा? किसानों को अगर हम लोन माफ करेंगे इतने लाख करोड़ का खर्च आएगा, ये कहां से आएगा? लेकिन ये सवाल करने वालों से मेरा सवाल है कि जब ये सरकारें चुनाव जीत कर आती हैं और जब तमाम कारपोरेट के कर्जों को माफ करती हैं, तमाम कारपोरेट को सहूलियतें देती हैं, तब उनके ये सवाल क्यों नहीं उठते? पहली बात।
That's a fair question, Urmilesh ji. That's a fair question. But forgive me, I have to interrupt you. On the phone line with us right now is Mr. Chidambaram, the former finance minister and one of the key architects in this manifesto. Mr. Chidambaram, good evening and thank you for speaking with us. A couple of quick questions. I understand that you're on the way to the airport. First question, the first point for the farmer and farm intervention in the manifesto talks about farm loan waivers. Would this be a total farm loan waiver effectively, and what would that cost us?
The details have to be worked out. Farm loans have been waived in some governments. So that's why we say we will do a farm loan waiver in other states. So we need to collect the details. In fact, there are even one or two BJP states which claim to have waived the farm loans. So without the data, I can't put a number, but that is a promise.
Well, you've also talked about a Kisan budget. Would you be able to tell us what you believe would be the advantages to the farm sector of having its own budget?
Just as we have a scheduled caste sub-plan and a tribal sub-plan, which puts together all the programs and the intended expenditure on those programs, aggregates them and presents it as a scheduled caste plan and tribal sub-plan. We will put together all the schemes for agriculture or agriculture-related activities and the resources that is being allocated for that, so that it's available in one place. There are two benefits. One is that there is transparency. The farmers know what they are getting, why they are getting it, for what scheme they are getting it. Farmers know what is being spent on agriculture and agriculture-related activities. The second benefit is it will make the Ministry of Agriculture and allied ministries more accountable. They will be asked now, if all this money was given to the agriculture sector and you have spent it, what are the outcomes? So I think in order to focus on agriculture, which is perhaps the most stressed sector of the country, and farmers are the most distressed people in this country, it's good to have a separate Kisan budget, which will be presented along with the general budget.
Mr. Chidambaram, the 4 lakh vacancies that the Congress party has promised to fill in central and central and public sector enterprises before 2020 will of course cost the government, because right now government is attempting to downsize its its bill at this point on salaries and pensions. Combined with the Nyay scheme and farm loan waivers as deemed necessary, would that seem, and the question that's being asked at this point, that it would seem too expensive or a large chunk of our spending in our union budget?
The 4 lakh vacancies are sanctioned posts. Sanctioned posts are lying vacant. What is the justification for that? On the one hand, you have millions of youth who are unemployed. On the other hand, government blissfully keeps vacancies unfilled. Secondly, many of these vacancies are for the deprived sections, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, OBCs. I remember under Sri Rajiv Gandhi, he asked me to look at the vacancies reserved for SCs, STs, which have not been filled. We did a massive drive, and in 6 months, we filled 55,000 vacancies intended for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, which have not been filled for one reason or another. There is both sound economics and good social justice in filling these vacancies. These are sanctioned vacancies. We're not creating new posts. If these posts were sanctioned for some reason and they are kept vacant, they should be filled. Otherwise, the post should be abolished. Why are they remaining vacant? And the other one, Nyay, I'm surprised you should ask this question. Read the section on Nyay. It's not to be done on day one.
Yes.
We're going to have a group which will design the scheme for us. There is a pilot and testing phase for 6 to 9 months. Then the rollout will be in phases. Year 1, year 2, and thereafter. So over a period of time, the scheme will be fully rolled out to cover 5 crore families. By that time, the denominator would also have increased. The GDP would have increased. The GDP, which is 210 lakh crore in 2019-20, would have increased to nearly 400 lakh crore by the end of the 5-year term. So why do you say this is not affordable and we have not done our math?
Yes.
I wonder if you ask this question, when Mr. Modi announced 15 lakh into every account, there were 100 crore back. 15 lakh into every bank account would have cost them 1,500 lakh crore. Nobody asked them the question. And today, when we are laying out the broad contours of the scheme and promising that at every stage we will consult the expert group and we will move from one stage to another only after a go-ahead, questions are being asked that we have not thought it through. Of course we have thought it through. We have done our homework and we will implement it.
Mr. Chidambaram, the question about changing the scope of the Supreme Court to just a constitutional court and to establish a court of appeal that will function between the High Courts and the Supreme Court. The problem that India is facing right now is a paucity of judges. Would this be then an implementable problem? Where would the judges come from?
We are not facing a paucity of judges. We are facing a defective procedure for selection. Are you seriously suggesting that a country with 130 crore people and thousands of lawyers, we can't find, say, 1,000 judges for this country or 1,200 judges for this country? I reject that argument. You have to have a better procedure for selection and appointment. Are we seriously suggesting that you can't find another, say, 6 and 2, 35, 36 judges for the Courts of Appeal? I don't believe it. I reject the argument.
Also, there has been a push here for the Maganrega scheme 3.0, it's called, to increase the number of days of employment from 100 days to 150 days. Do you believe this would change currently the distress in the rural sector?
You're missing the rider.
Yes.
Please read the sentence completely, Faye. The sentence reads to say, where they have already achieved 100 days, we will increase it to up to 150 days.
Okay.
Which means if they have reached 100 days, say by the month of January, we can't tell them in February and March, you won't be given Manrega employment. So we might have to give them a few days of employment in February and March. It may go up to 120, it may go up to 130, depending upon the demand. So it is not across the board 150. Where they have reached 100 days, we cannot deprive them of work or wages. Therefore, we say we will go up to 150 days.
Mr. Chidambaram, Mr. Jaitley has called this manifesto irresponsible and dangerous. Do you have a response for
He also said it is unimplementable, and I entirely agree with him. It is unimplementable by a BJP government.
I have a couple of more questions for you, if you'd allow me. You've also talked about...
No, you have to wind up quickly.
Yes, last question. You've also talked about a Make in India for the world, effectively, where you're talking about exclusive for export-only zones. Is this the same as manufacturing SEZs or the Make in India plan, or similar to the Make in India plan that the current government announced? How would this be different?
Those were not for exclusive export. Those were diluted by saying you can export such a percentage, you can sell in the domestic market. Then they had deemed exports, then a whole chapter on deemed exports. That is not the idea. The idea is we invite foreign and Indian investors to set up manufacturing facilities in these exclusive export zones and say your entire production must be exported. If you do that, we will treat you lightly as far as direct taxes are concerned. Of course, indirect taxes will be rebated in an export case, but they will create huge employment. And these will be high-value employment, number one. Number two, Indian goods made in India will reach new markets, will penetrate new markets. The Made in India brand will acquire a certain value because of its quality.
Right. Mr. Chidambaram, you also talked about bringing petrol and alcohol under GST and normalizing or standardizing the GST rates. This would hurt state revenue. Would you be able to bring the state governments on board with this?
They have to come on board. Even under the present dispensation, they have to eventually come on board. All that we are saying is we're going to quicken the process because this arbitrary tinkering with excise duties on petrol and diesel has hurt the common man. You ask anyone in India, rural, urban, they will say this government has arbitrarily changed prices of petrol and diesel only to enrich its coffers. In fact, this government is a tax petroleum products and spend government. It's a one-horse race, one-trick pony.
The direct tax code that's been mentioned in this manifesto, is this the same version that you were working on when you were finance minister? Will it be a different version?
Actually, there are three versions. I had one when I left the finance ministry to go to the home ministry. Then there was one by Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, which was actually published in the form of a book or manual. And then when I returned to the finance ministry, I had updated it and made some changes. Now, let's take the last version. Since then, 5 years have elapsed. Some of those provisions are perhaps already incorporated in the Income Tax Act by way of amendment. The Income Tax Act is such a clumsy act, such a cluttered act. I find it difficult to keep track of what was changed, when it was changed. We want a direct access code, a neat direct access code that is simple to comply with, simple to administer. And I think it's long overdue. We can't live with an income tax act of the 1960s until now. We can't live with that income tax act anymore.
Mr. Chidambaram, many thanks for speaking with us this evening and sharing giving us clarity, offering us clarity on the Congress manifesto. P Chidambaram, former finance minister, senior Congress leader, joining us on the phone line there. Let me quickly go back to my guest. Anupam, the spokesperson of Swaraj, hasn't spoken yet. Mr. Anupam, forgive me for coming to you so late. He's not with us. Mr. Urmilesh, आप बात कर रहे थे. मैं आपसे क्षमा मांगती हूँ, आपको इंटरप्ट किया मैंने. आप बताइए, आपने अभी सुना कि पी चिदम्बरम ने थोड़ी क्लैरिफिकेशन ऑफर की. हाँ, बोलिए.
हाँ, नहीं, मैं कंक्लूड करूंगा क्योंकि और भी लोगों को बोलना है कि देखिए, शर्मा जी जो कह रहे थे वो तमाम ग्रीवेंसेस किसानों की सही हैं और पार्टियों से मोहभंग उनका होता रहा है. लेकिन हाँ, इस मैनिफेस्टो में मैं एक ख़ास बात देख रहा हूँ जो मैं आपके दर्शकों के सामने भी शेयर करना चाहता हूँ. वो ये कि 1984 से मैं लगभग पार्टियों के मैनिफेस्टो देख रहा हूँ और उन पर कवर करता रहा हूं. इस मैनिफेस्टो में एक कांग्रेस के लिहाज से, अगर कांग्रेस पार्टी को देखा जाए तो उसके लिहाज से इसमें एक बिल्कुल नई कांग्रेस दिखाई दे रही है जो एजुकेशन पर 6% खर्च करने की बात कर रही है और मैंने ये हेल्थ केयर पर वो एक नए ढंग का फोकस डाल रही है कि मोदी जी की आयुष्मान जो योजना है, जो बेसिकली इंश्योरेंस बेस्ड योजना है, उसको खारिज करती है और कहती है कि हम पब्लिक हेल्थ जो स्ट्रक्चर है उसको मजबूत करेंगे. और ये दो पहलू मुझे लगता है बहुत नए हैं. इसके पहले भी कभी कांग्रेस पार्टी ने एजुकेशन पर और हेल्थ केयर पर इस तरह से पब्लिक फंडिंग की बात खुलेआम अपने मैनिफेस्टो में नहीं कही थी. जबकि 1964-65 में दौलत सिंह कोठारी कमीशन जब बना था हिंदुस्तान में एजुकेशन के लिए, तब उसने 6% रिकमेंडेशन किया था एजुकेशन पर. हार्डली हम अभी इस वक्त 2.4 या 2.5 खर्च कर रहे हैं. वायदा किया था 3.2% का मोदी जी ने. तो इसी तरह से हेल्थ में आप देख लीजिए, कुल मिलाकर 38,000 करोड़ के आसपास हम खर्च कर रहे हैं, जो कि हमारे रफाल की पूरी कीमत से भी बहुत कम है. तो हमारा ये कहना है कि ये कुछ नई चीज़ें हैं जो एक नए कांग्रेस का संकेत दे रही हैं. और दूसरी बात जो अरुण जेटली साहब ने 2 पॉइंट उठाए हैं नेशनल सिक्योरिटी को लेकर, देखिए आपस्पा को लेकर, और दूसरा कि और भी कुछ उन्होंने एक इशू और उठाया था, कि डायलॉग प्रोसेस वगैरह को लेकर। उनका कहना है कि इसमें नेशनल जो यूनिटी है, नेशनल इंटीग्रेशन है और सुरक्षा का जो मसला है वो बहुत खतरनाक हो जाएगा। मुझे लगता है कि जेटली जी भले ही उनका मूल कश्मीर से जुड़ा हो लेकिन, या पंजाब से जुड़ा हो, लेकिन वो कश्मीर विजिट नहीं करते। मैं एक स्टूडेंट के रूप में, मैं एक जर्नलिस्ट के रूप में कश्मीर लगातार जाता रहा हूं और मेरा यह मानना है कि आफ्सपा या इस तरह के जितने ड्रैकोनियन लॉज हैं, जब कभी उनमें ढिलाई की गई है, कश्मीर के हालात और बेहतर हुए हैं।
जी
मणिपुर के हालात और बेहतर हुए हैं।
उर्मिला जी, मुझे वापस किसानों के मुद्दे पे वापस आनी है, बट आई टेक योर पॉइंट एंड मिस्टर सोच is also here who understands Kashmir quite closely, but I want to take this back to Mr. Hussain and Mr. Damodaran. Mr. Damodaran, you first. Obviously, what P Chidambaram was saying was effectively what's in the manifesto. But do you believe that there is clarity in the party right now on implementation of these policies? Again, one of the policies we must mention that's been mentioned in the manifesto is that no farmer will be brought in of a criminal offence. Defaulting on a loan in the farm sector will not be a criminal offence. Will that make a difference on the ground?
Definitely. See, because in fact, in Indian Express, we had been running some stories from Punjab, where many banks, they had been they had been taking post-dated checks from farmers, whenever they were extending them the loans. And what would happen is, suppose the farmer defaulted, something of this kind. What they would do is they would deposit these checks without asking the farmers, and then they used to go for these criminal cases using the Negotiable Instruments Act. So we know many farmers who have had to actually go to jail, on check bouncing cases. So again, this definitely is going to have a lot of impact on the ground. The fact that when a farmer defaults, it is just a civil whatever case, and it should not be treated as a criminal case. And according to me, that will make a lot of difference, on the ground. So see, overall, how I look at it is, at least, there seems to be some kind of a sensitivity to farmers' issues in this entire manifesto. Whereas I think that was not coming across in this government. Like for example, I don't know whether a separate agriculture budget is going to make any difference, really. But the fact that there is much more than symbolic value. See, I think the current government didn't even bother about symbolism. They selected a minister who knows nothing about agriculture. They put the most junior-most person as a minister in charge of agriculture. They never had we have never had a director for the Pusa Institute now for the last 5 years. Most of the ICAR institutes are completely without full-time directors. So at least when you are prioritizing agriculture, that itself, according to me, is a very forward steps. And as Chidambaram said, all these things are a matter of detail. Whether it is Nyay or whether it is or whether it is a loan waiver. So I don't think probably the budgetary expenditure and all is going to be as much as we are talking about. Whereas when there are specific proposals, like they say they are going to scrap the Essential Commodities Act, and they are going to scrap the APMC Act, and we are going to move towards a sort of a liberalized regime in agriculture. I think that is something which we need to focus more on.
Yes.
The others are all, it is, and the other interesting thing is they have not said, and they've just talked of, I think the Congress manifesto has just talked of appropriate minimum support prices. It's very vague. Whereas I think earlier they were talking of C2 plus 50%, whatever. So they have left it, I think, intentionally vague.
Yes. So and even the promise of the farm loan waiver, Mr. Damodaran, is vague, because on one hand it says we will waive loans on in other states. Mr. Chidambaram being vague about which state, what will it cost, whether it will need or not. So it is meant perhaps to sort of influence voters without giving out any of the specifics and committing any of the specifics there. We're going to leave this at this point as we have to take a quick break, but we'll come back on the other side and take a look at implementation of manifesto promises in jobs, for startups, for businesses, for the economy, and talk about whether or not those promises are in fact implementable in this Congress manifesto. It's important for us to understand this because as we go out and vote, you have to decide whether you believe the person you're voting for is going to be able to fulfill their promises, and then we're going to hold them accountable to those promises. That's on the other side. Don't go anywhere.